as a man. Obviously, the last few days has been very, very, very tough on anybody in the Black community. Starting off with we got the news when we was in Memphis with the Jacob Blake announcement, and with the cop being let off, or not being accused of that brutal murder, and then with yesterday seeing what happened, at our national capital, inside the Capitol. It's we live in two Americas, and that was prime example of that yesterday. And if you don't understand that or don't see that after seeing what you saw yesterday, then you really need to take a step back. Not even just one step, maybe 4 or 5 or even 10 steps backwards, and ask yourself how do you want your kids, or how do you want your grandkids? How do we want America to be viewed as? How do we want to live, in this beautiful country? Because yesterday was not it, and being a part of a household with 3 kids, 2 boys, a daughter, a wife, a mother-in-law, and so many, Black folks in my household during that time, and it's on the TV. Couldn't help but to wonder if those were my kind storming the Capitol, what would have been the outcome?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Morass, host of the SOS, the ShOUT show. Hope you're having a wonderful Saturday. I decided I wanted to have some fun. Actually, I wanted to talk about some things I've been working on, some ideas that will eventually probably wind up in my comedy routine, but also in my lecture that I do for End of Racism Comedy and Lecture Tour. I just ran a little clip of LeBron James, who's been echoing something that's been coming out of the sporting community, but it's been coming out of the African-American community for quite a while. And that is the notion of 2 Americas. That notion of 2 Americas really building upon the fact that what you see is not necessarily what you feel is fair, or even more so, the idea, brothers and sisters, that there's a justice over here for one group of people, and there's another justice over here for another group of people, which I've heard for years. Don't get me wrong, I've heard for years. This has been echoing in the African-American community for years. But what I want to add on to this, while I have everybody here, it's not just America, there's 2 Americas. There's 2 truths in America. There's 2 different sets of truths in America. The insurrection that we saw, a lot of people going, you could see it coming, you could see it on the internet chatter, you can see it on social media, you can see it on some of these apps. You could throw the tea leaves in the water and you knew something bad was going to happen. But I would stop everyone there to say, yes, something bad is going to happen, but here's my worry, here's my concern. There's something worse down the road. I'm worried that there's something worse down the road. I watched some of the protesters talk about the reason why they were storming the Capitol. It's not that they were mad. They felt this sense of a misplaced victimization. They said our country is being taken from us. Listen to what I'm saying. Our country is being taken from us. Hold that thought. They said they're taking our freedom. Hold that thought. They said they're not recognizing the voice of the people. Hold that thought. Brothers and sisters, these are the registrants and the calibrated talk and strategies of what we were known as psychopaths, people that we call psychopaths. Now, before I get into this thing too deep, because I'm going to take probably the whole 30 minutes today, because I'm going to talk about something called Truth Defaunt Theory. It's called the Truth Defaunt Theory. I've been reading about it for a little while. It was in a book I'm reading called Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. And I was working out this morning. I really thought about how this thing really plays. And I started writing out all this different stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a mammoth idea that we're talking about. The insurrection that you saw is a mere byproduct, brothers and sisters. It's a mere byproduct. It is the regurgitation of these lies. And I'm going to tell you a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about Truth Defaunt Theory. Before we get into it, let me make my formal introductions. Anybody who's come to the show for the first time, I don't know if you're looking for comedy. You found Preacher Moss. I'm the host of the show. I have family on the show. They are known as the ShOUT family, the ShOUT soldiers. They are the people who engage me in this conversation. Even further, brothers and sisters, if you come to the show for the first time, don't come here light. Don't come here light. We talk about things that affect us in our communities. We talk about things that affect the growth and welfare of our children. We're talking about a lot of aspects, brothers and sisters. In this, I have to even add to this scenario that I'm about to say. We're going to talk about what's really going on with these Trump supporters. Because if it's indicative of America, you know, LeBron James said there's two different Americas. I believe Doc Rivers says there's two different Americas. You know, there's a song called It's Because I'm Black, and it talks about two different Americas. But I want to go further. I'm not going to talk about two different Americas. We're going to talk about the two different truths in America, what makes America look like that and what makes America look like that. So before I go, if you're coming on the show for the first time, let me give you a quick rundown. Welcome. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your time. I hope that I'm able to give you a show worthy of coming on and spending your time. That's number one. Number two, you're part of the official ShOUT Show family. Don't be shy. If you have a comment you want to put it in the comment section, I'm going to give you your shout out. Even if you don't have one, give a slam, give a hello. I'm going to give you your shout out. Okay. And if you don't mind, small favor, we're trying to go to the process and the platform. If you don't mind clicking the subscribe button, the notification button, and if you like the show, click the like button. And also click the share button if you like this, brothers and sisters. I'm going to tell everybody here, if you go on YouTube, if you like the show, click the share button, because I think these are the conversations we need to start having. And when I say that, it is nothing to I'm not putting any shade on anything we've done. I feel like my sincere urge is we really need to expand the program. We really need to have these conversations. So what I'm going to talk about, brothers and sisters, is Truth Defaunt Theory and how it ties into this insurrection that you saw. Now, Truth Defaunt Theory, it's a psychological term. You can do your homework on the person that came up with it. I don't get into all of that. But it basically says that we as human beings are horrible at picking out deception. Let me say it again. We're horrible at picking out deception. And we're good at picking out truth, but we're horrible at picking out deception. Listen to what I just said. We're better at picking out truth than we are at picking out deception. And the reason we're better at picking out truth is because we tend to listen to people who give us truth, because people who give us truth tend to give us details that are verifiable, if you will. They tend to give you the minute details of a story that you may not be able to ask for, but because there's so much detail to it, you tend to say, I can believe that person. Now, what people don't understand is while we give credit, if you will, to the truth, we also give credit to deception. And therein comes the idea of Truth Defaunt Theory, the default, which means that when we have doubts about somebody, and we have more doubts about somebody, we will exhaust the question of why we have doubts about somebody, as opposed to looking at the fact that we actually have doubts. That we actually have, you ever had that feeling when somebody said something to you, you said, it's not right, but you couldn't figure out what it was that wasn't right? He said, there's something about that dude. He could never figure out what it was about that dude, but that doubt, brothers and sisters, stopped right there. And because you stopped the doubt right there, guess what you did? You defaulted to the truth. You gave truth to that person. Well, here in America, with social media, let's just say around the world, brothers. I'm not going to put it out here in America. Around the world, politics and social media and things that I like have delved into Truth Defaunt Theory. Think of some of the things you see on the internet. Some of the conspiracies, if you will. At one point in time, the conspiracies were fun. You could look them up. I have to say that I've been watching things on YouTube and I clicked on them because the tag was interesting. The tag was interesting. I watched Fat Joe Big Show, and it said It said Joe goes at somebody, and he wasn't going at somebody. He was simply interviewing a person. He wasn't going at a person. It says Fat Joe fight somebody, and if you click and you're thinking you're going to see a fight, and what you see is just an interview. But the person who put it on there that listed it as a fight, guess what you did? You increased their views. And if it happened to me, it could happen to a million other people. Now, let me get to the comments section, because I believe everybody has something to say about this. Truth Defaunt Theory. And I'm going to talk about Trump's insurrection. First of all, let me give a shout out to Sister Satana, the consultant producer. Thank you so much, Sister Satana. And we will be talking, inshallah, this evening about Salesforce. I appreciate you coming on the show. Sister Satana makes this thing work, brothers and sisters. You know, everybody says, how many shows have you done? You need to say, how many shows have you done? And Sister Satana has been at all of them. We're closely arriving 300 shows. That's dedication. That's how I know when she does her show, when she steps out, she's going to be a star, because she's had all this time to sit back, look at how you put together shows, you know, make her notes, personalize it, make it custom. She's going to have a great show. And I'm going to be front row and center when she has it. This is my brother, Johnny L. Thomas, JT from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. JT just had a situation in the state of Wisconsin with man James Blake, who just got shot. He just got shot, but he was shot 7 times in the back. And here's the killer part. None of the officers involved, he was shot 7 times in the back. None of the officers involved were indicted. I actually thought that there was going to be a riot in Milwaukee or Kenosha around this. Didn't happen. I guess the people who had done it came down to the Capitol because that was what was more important. JT, I know you understand what I'm about to say about this Truth Defaunt Theory. And I'm going to take everybody back. And give us salams to Miss Maisie, too. Wa alaikum assalam, Sister Aika, all the way from Indonesia, Tepak, Jakarta, Indonesia. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you waking up right after Fajr joining us. And Brother Altaf Rashid, thank you, man. I appreciate you, brother. I think you may be able to vibe with this topic a little bit too, man, because as much as I'm going to talk about it in America, you know what? It's happening in our own Muslim community. I'm going to talk about that too. Just a little bit. It might be another show, but I'm going to talk about that. Wa alaikum assalam, Brother Adam Khan, all the way. Here comes Brother Oakville, Ontario. I got it right, brother. I've been waiting to say that all day. It's easy to lay this at the feet of the president, but I've been thinking about how so many people believe something that is clearly BS, that their actions could change the results. I want you to hold on to that thought, Brother Adam, because I'm going to go deep with it today. It has so much to do with the topic, Truth Defaunt Theory. Now, I said at the beginning, and this is no knock on anybody, I've said this, and believe me, I've been one, I thought somebody was so-and-so, or first impression, they turned out to be a horrible individual. Or offered somebody's information I thought was truthful, I thought it was good, reliable information. They didn't know what the heck they were talking about. And I made a bad decision because I trusted that somebody. Okay, before we get deep into this thing, let's say all of us, none of us are all known, we all make mistakes. We've all trusted somebody that maybe we shouldn't have trusted. Maybe you trusted that person, then over a period of time, they lost your trust. They did something to betray your trust. That's all well and good. But in this situation, we're talking about the idea or the fact of the matter that we tend to give trust to strangers more so than we give to people that we know. I'm going to give you guys a little scenario. My brother and I, JT, we were in Milwaukee one time. I was doing a open mic. I think it was downtown off of Water Street, JT. You might remember that. We all did the club and all the comedians were hanging outside. And there was a guy, brothers and sisters, who came up and, you know, he was down on his luck and He basically told everybody all the troubles he was going through and the problems, and his family was suffering. And we literally looked around and we gathered up money, we gave it to him. We stayed late that night just hanging out, it was just one of them summer nights. Lo and behold, not even an hour and a half later, the same guy came up and began to give the same story. And all of us were looking around like, what in the world is this? He doesn't know that he just came. He talked to me. And in the middle of his approach, I said, time, bro. You already talked to me. And he looked at me and said, are you sure? But let me tell you what was going on, brothers and sisters. He believed that his level of deception was so high that maybe I made a mistake about giving him the money the first time. Now, Truth Defaunt Theory would be that I look at him and go, well, maybe he didn't come the first time. And maybe, you know what? I'm not sure. It might have been somebody. Let me go ahead and give him some more money. That's the way Truth Defaunt Theory works. We stop questioning, brothers and sisters. We have doubts, but we don't investigate our doubts. We don't fully exhaust the doubt process. And because of that, you will have things like the Trump insurrection. Now, let me get to this whole part about the two, not the two Americas, but the two truths. Let me get a shout out as well. This is Santiago. Thank you so much for coming on the show all the way from Dallas. I hope everything is going well with you and your health is in good shape. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad to hear that. And Sister Satana, yes, thank you. You just reminded me. Prayers out to the Indonesian flight that went down. I think it was Thousand Islands. It was between two. It lost, I think it was 73 adults, 7 children, I think 12 aircraft staff. So prayers go out to them. I don't know if they found the plane yet. It crashed in the water from what I understand, from what I remember reading. They do have search crews out, but the waters are really rough. They're really choppy. And I think it's at night. It's dark. So special shout out to them. Real big shout out. I'm talking about this, but that's huge. Loss of life is huge. Thank you, Sister Satana, for bringing that up. I want to play with people's memory a little bit about Truth Defaunt Theory. In the United States, we've had all kinds of things happen. The James Blake thing, the George Floyd thing, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. We had all these things, but there was a landmark incident that happened years ago. And let me tell you what it was. Many of you know. In the early 90s, there was a motorist who was involved in a high-speed chase. He was suspected to be under a controlled substance, things like that. He was pulled over, and 4 white officers pulled this man out of the car. They didn't arrest him. They didn't give him a breathalyzer. They literally beat on this man for quite a while with billy clubs, concussing him. They hit him with stun guns. They beat the snot out of this guy. The guy's name was Rodney King. Now, the only reason, brothers and sisters, I can tell you about Rodney King is because somebody videotaped it. But before then, the talk about police brutality, brothers and sisters, had more and more to do with truth. See, that was black truth. We just didn't have body cameras and things like that. That was the truth. That was black truth. And in America, you have white truth and you have whatever else is left. I won't say white truth. I have your white supremacy truth, the institutional racism truth, and then you have what is the rest truth. In this case, for the majority of this argument, it's going to be African American truth. Meaning that unless you get corroboration from them, it didn't happen. Unless your truth lines up symmetrically and advantageously with their truth, it didn't happen. Case in point. I'm talking about that. Let me show you how truth works. Years ago, there was a group called NWA. Now, y'all know what NWA stands for, right? Don't have to go there. They had a group called NWA. NWA's album straight out of Compton, hit the streets. Wow. It was a street manifesto. Sure, they talked about killing people. They talked about women in a derogatory way. And you can argue that right now, but at that point in time, that's what they were seeing in South Central. Okay? What I'm bringing it up for is there was a woman, Al Gore's wife, who looked at this thing and another proliferation of rap artists that were coming out with the same message, and she thought that there should be a parental advisory. Now, at this point in time, rap in and of itself was still black. Young brothers were still able to get out there, and they still had some autonomy. It was still their truth. But when she got involved, Miss Tipper Gore, she dragged it all the way to the thing, made it a big scenario whereby the truth, their truth, had to be filtered. So what you had was a parental advisory sticker that went over all the records that were seeming to be having bad messages, bad language, misogynist lyrics. Okay. Do you ever hear these days in 2021 about that label? No. I went on iTunes today. I just picked out a random record. They don't even say explicit lyrics. They just say E. It used to be that you can get a clean version and an explicit version, but the explicit version sells. So you don't even get the clean version anymore. I'm saying this because it's two different truths. That truth that they were talking about is so that white kids could listen to it. The truth that we were stuck with, the original one, that was okay. Because for the white kids listen to this record, or the well-to-do kids listen to this record, or the non-black kids in the ghetto listen to this record, it was entertainment. It was not truth. It was glorification of this, that, and the other, but it wasn't truth. And if it was to be truth, it had to be through their lens of truth. So when you're talking about this default theory, brothers and sisters, there's two things going on. And Mr. LeBron James is right. The two Americas are defined by how people default the truth. If you want to know about how America, particularly Black America, view Donald Trump and the Trump supporters, it should be known that in a city that has huge African American population, the suburb is one of the largest African American suburbs in the country. If not in the country, brothers and sisters, I think so. It is number one, I believe, Prince George's County, where my mother lives. None of them were in the city at the time. None of them. And the reason why is because the mayor of DC, Mayor Bowser, told everybody with dog whistles, if you will, Black folk don't come down here. She said, don't come down here. If you have to work, call in, but do not come down here. And they correctly assessed the situation because the insurrection was not on the way. The insurrection had already happened. Now, I've told you about Truth Defaunt Theory with Black folk. Now, as African Americans, we're very, very adept, more so than most, at, guess what? Picking out deception. We pick out deception. Our relationship with white America is based on deception. Very few of us are not skeptical, are not trusting of the relationship with ourselves and American government and American history as it will be. You can't come give us your truth. You couldn't sell it to us. We wouldn't take it. Now, people can say that's a dangerous model. It's not a dangerous model. This is the thing that's come on us. And let me even say this further. When we have doubts, clearly we have many, we don't mind pursuing the doubt till we get to, wait for it, the truth. We don't mind doing that. And in that, it creates a problem. Because this group over here must have you believe what they believe. They must have you have the same core values that they believe. And if you do not do that, all of a sudden, it's not that we don't get along, it's that your truth, number one, is not valued. Your truth, number two, has no values. And if you want to know the long-standing problems between African American and the government, is that there's no trust. The government asks us not to see what we see not to think what we think, not to hear what we hear, and not to feel what we feel. The same thing is happening in the Muslim community, brothers and sisters. I don't want to get into this whole division between indigenous Muslims and immigrant Muslims, but under this spirit of America's dream, we've fallen into the same thing. It's not that Islam is different. It's that we have different relationships to Islam. And in that, brothers and sisters, we don't want to hear each other's truth. Or one group don't want to value another's truth. And that'll probably be another show. But before this show, let me be really, really clear. The Trump supporters hitched their wagon to a sociopath. Let me say it again. The Trump supporters hitched their wagon to a sociopath. Now, let me tell you something about sociopaths, brothers and sisters. It's not that they're just deceptive, but they can't help it. I'd say much the same as characteristics of Shaitan. You know, is Shaitan a bad person? He does bad things. You know why? Because he can't help it. So is the same thing as a sociopath. Donald Trump, on the day of this insurrection, literally continued to lie to people, literally continued to mislead people. And why could he get along with it? Why could he get away with it, brothers and sisters? What would make people who are normally rational people? Look at this Senator Hawley from Missouri. This is a guy who went to Stanford and Yale, an attorney, a rising star. All of a sudden, he's doing irrational things, telling people that the vote is fraudulent and not to certify the vote. And he's leading this thing. He may be forced to resign. Him and Ted Cruz should step down as I'm speaking right now. And I'm going to tell y'all why. Because these guys figure out if Trump could do it, I could do it too. If Trump could do it, I could do it too. Cruz is on record talking about how dangerous Trump is. Lindsey Graham is on record talking about how dangerous Trump is. And it is sad because in the environment, brothers and sisters, if you are in an environment, and I talked about severely most disturbed environments, let me reframe that. The technical term for severely most disturbed is the behaviors are so extreme that they can't function in a regular environment. Let me tell you about the scope of a sociopath. Their behaviors are so extreme that they have to make the environment around them just as extreme. And that's what you have now. You have people who don't realize how extreme their environment is and how isolated they are. To watch grown men run into a place where they figured out, brothers and sisters, and they hurt people. Guards got killed, a woman got killed. They ran in, and this is the killer part, they ran into the Congress and they didn't know what they were going to do other than to hurt other people. You know the saying, hurt people hurt other people. Hurt people hurt people. That's the saying. Hurt people hurt people. This is the exact same thing, but that's a part of that thing, that truth. And with Donald Trump, brothers and sisters, the insurrection is led by the fact that they have been engaged in Truth Defaunt Theory for the last 5 to 7 years. The steal the vote thing did not start with this election. It started in the Iowa primaries. When Ted Cruz won, ironically, Trump said if he wins, the vote is fraudulent. Something's wrong with it. This is in a Republican primary. We're not talking about what happened in November. And because we don't do enough homework, or we do in some fact, let me take that back. A lot of us do the homework, but here's the killer part. If you're part of a minority and you do the homework, your truth is not going to balance against the deception of the people who think what they're being told is true. And let me take a break and bring this up. Adam, what you got for me, Adam? Indigenous Muslim, Imam Siraj. You're not a real Muslim because you weren't born Muslim. His response is not how you start the race, is how you finish. Yes. I didn't even want to go into that, Adam, because that's a deep concept. That's going to be part of my thesis. I want you to read it. Okay, Ahmad Shahid said they can't help it. They just don't want to. They'd rather wear the emperor's new clothes and listen to those they consider beneath them. I agree. They can They can't help it, but I'm going to say something in a mental illness type of way. Brother Ahmed, they can't help it because they don't see anything that's wrong. Just, you can watch the media reports. People saying Trump is going to, a second impeachment is coming, and he's worried about that. People are jumping ship. But they're saying he shouldn't resign. You know why he said he shouldn't resign? Because he thinks he didn't do anything wrong. Do you see how crazy this is? You purposely deceive people up to this insurrection, and you don't think you did it? You're on tape. That's why every time the guy would lie, it was just lie on lie on lie on lie, because he knew a portion of us were going to go, he's lying. And then a portion of them would go, hallelujah, praise Jesus. He's a truth sayer, because they've been drinking the Kool-Aid. You know who's the last person that realizes that they're an addict, a drug addict, or a sex addict, or an alcoholic? It's the alcoholic, it's the sex addict, it's the drug addict. And they would have everyone around them saying, you're killing yourself, you're drinking too much, you're doing too much drugs, you're out of control. But they don't listen. Because the truth of them is wrapped in what? The thing that they're addicted to. And it's the same thing with these Trump supporters and this conservative thing. They built, brothers and sisters, for lack of a better word, they built a whole industry around this guy's deception. And if you pull one thread from the ball, the whole thing falls apart. You know how you pull something from a sweater? If I pull this, the whole arm falls off. And it's the same thing, brothers and sisters, what's going on with these Trump supporters. As I speak right now, there are people who are gathering a consensus to come back before the inauguration and really do damage. Like this was just a prelude to what they're going to do. And here's the dangerous thing. In the deep recesses of these country roads and these little towns, you can move those aside, because some of the people who came to D.C., they were local. They were people we may consider doctors and lawyers and privileged people and people of high conscience and moral character. But when they get alone, brothers and sisters, quietly, and they watch their TV and they look at these apps and they look at this social media, and there's no one around, and they start looking at what this man is saying, as well as the other organizations, QAnon and Fox and all these people, when there's no one around to introduce any kind of counter logic, they're just injecting it over and over and over and over and over again. And think about this, brothers and sisters. Think about it. Here's where the two Americas really fit in. We're not a part of that America. We're part of that America where we might say, hi, how you doing at work? Hey, Billy, we're going to have a beer after work. But when they go home and there is an absence of us, the truth changes. And you're not privy to that truth. I have a very good friend, love him dearly. But we've fallen out numerous times over his support of Donald Trump. And I asked him, as a Christian man, how can you support a lawyer? How can you support a liar? I'm showing you video of the man lying. How can? And he says he's good for the country. If he has to lie to make sure this country moves, I'm like, whoa. You talking to an OG? You talking to somebody? I'm 50-some years old. What you telling me doesn't have any merit? But he's so inculcated on the lies that, brothers and sisters, what's coming out of Donald Trump's mouth is beyond their thinking that they could be misled, beyond their thinking that this man would deceive them. And now I'm worried, because you have people going, wait a minute, oh my God, he's been deceiving me. And it's not until they start having, brothers and sisters, loss. Let me do it. What's going on, Doug? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Riding around the hood, a lot of people have pulled off their Trump stickers. Better to have them go out back hiding, systemic whack-a-mole. Yeah. Now I'm going to say something. It's not controversial. But he begins to wrap this thing up. The poor, the minority, women, they've always had a problem with getting their truth out. They live the truth, but getting it to the mainstream has always been difficult. Like if you have a truth, brothers and sisters, think of the police. The police have a truth that they can tell to the people that will listen to the truth. For the people who have to live in these policed areas, they have a different reality. In this community, think about this, in this community over here, predominantly white community, the truth is for a police officer that I go over there to protect you over here. And if you tell enough truths, enough verifiable truths, then it becomes systemic that it can't be possible that you would deceive me. Case in point, there was a young man who was killed in Colorado. His name doesn't come right to mind, but basically he was walking down the street. The police asked him, he was coming from a store. He wasn't bothering anybody. The police asked him something. They put him in a chokehold. They injected him with something. He wound up dying in a hospital. He had nothing to do with what they were doing. But in the report, if you were to read the report and not see the tape, they would say that he was aggressive. He caused his own injuries. You see what I'm saying? Where I'm going with this. And only because there was a video that came out months later after the young man had died, did we get to see that something was wrong, that the truth indeed was in question. And even then, the truth being in question, people began to say, well, he was kind of aggressive and he was screaming, and they equate screaming not with pain, but with disrespect or being unlawful. He did have drugs. Yeah, if you inject him in a drug, he did have drugs in his body, but you injected him the drugs. You broke his neck. And even then, these officers are still walking around because they know I can tell my truth over here. People say, why is the country so divided? Because you have people who are very good at picking out the BS. We're very adept at pulling BS. That ain't, man, dude lying. We say that all the time. Man, I even tell you, dude lying. You can see it in my eyes. And because of that, the people over here, they resent the people over here. They resent the people that tell the truth. They resent the people that have the rose-colored glasses off, and they say, wait a minute, this is the truth of my reality. You need to respect it. And the thing that happened, brothers and sisters, and this is really dangerous. So I want everybody to be very careful about this. Because a couple nights ago, I think I literally said, hey, I'm not a gun advocate, but if you need to go get a piece, go get a piece. You need to go get a gun to protect yourself. And I was thinking about it specifically in Washington, D.C. because the African-American community in Washington, D.C. pretty much had a perimeter around where they are. You know, D.C. is split into northwest, northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast. And around that area is a large population of African Americans, particularly on the Prince George's County side. And I thought about this as I watched a man go through I don't know if he was in the Senate space or he was in the House, but he walked around with a Confederate flag. And he had his Confederate flag on his shoulder. And that's not by mistake. He literally wanted to know that, in some regards, it's still our justice. It might not be our election, but this is still our justice. And wait for it, this is still our truth. And the larger question reminds me of something that Doc Rivers said after the James Blake case, and after George Floyd, and after Ahmaud Arbery. The NBA stopped. The NBA stopped. And they said, we're not going to play games for a couple of days because the NBA players, something erupted in their soul. Something deep, brothers and sisters, was torn. It was already being tethered together, but it was torn away. And what they saw was that the truth didn't matter. And Doc Rivers said something, and I'll never forget it. He said, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, how am I supposed to love a country that doesn't love me back? How am I supposed to love a country that doesn't love me back? How do you survive that way? That's the African American experience. That's the Native American experience. We live it every day. How do you love a country that doesn't love you back, that you know doesn't love you back and hasn't loved you back? You have to fight for not even love. You have to fight for recognition, existence, not even love, not appreciation, not what you contribute. No, I'm talking about just basic existence and recognition. So all these things, brothers and sisters, as I wrap up, and we talk about Truth Defaunt Theory. Something happened at the Capitol that's deeper than what they're saying. It's deeper than resigning. It's deeper than impeachment. Because those are elements of their truth. Not our truth, their truth. Because impeachment is a process. Resigning is a process. Let me tell you something. If I was at a job and the man said show up at 3 o'clock and I showed up at 10 o'clock with no pants on, I'm not going to be working. I'm probably going to get called. They're probably going to call the police on me. 1, I'm fired. 2, I'm arrested for indecent exposure for walking around with no pants on. But in this world, somebody go, well, something probably happened to the pants. Maybe he had to get them cleaned and they didn't have them cleaned. Maybe he's going to get the pants later. He came late, probably because he's waiting on the pants. Because you know why? Truth Defaunt Theory. You're going to keep kicking your doubts all the way down the road to pretty soon you accept whatever it is in front of you. That's the truth. And here it is, America. And here it is, brothers and sisters. We are in the position we are in right today. Right today. Because for the first time, and I don't know, since the beginning of this country, that this portion of white America loved this white man to death. They followed him to the point where they made insurrections. They hurt other white people. And the thing that's killing them right now, you know what I'm going to say, is they finally feel what black people feel. They invested their heart and soul and love and belief in all their values and all their religion. They invested that into a man who didn't love them back. How's it feel? It's Preacher Moss. This is the SOS, the ShOUT Show. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. God bless. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your ShOUT Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next ShOUT Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Truth Defaunt Theory. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out TruthDefauntTheory.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.